Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invite.
Great to have you here. You've got a business partner that's also in the podcasting world.
That's right.
Yeah. How far into it is he?
A few weeks so far, but he's pretty serious about it, Nick. He's got a podcast room. Lucky enough to have a spare room at home to set up a desk and make our own furniture. So made our own podcast table and a light built into a sign and some mics that were floating around. Put them into podcast cases and all sorts of things. So there's some ideas in the pipeline there in terms of a podcast for common people of Christchurch, I suppose you could say, a whole variety of. But it's Nick's project, and I support him when he has energy for it because we're pretty busy with what we do day to day. Yeah,
it leads in nicely. Actually, I was lucky enough to see your business, see where you guys work, see some of your products in varying stages of production, and I'm hugely impressed. I'm just passionate about the design. It's awesome to see. So give us the rundown, man.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Well, the rundown probably goes back to lockdown originally. So Nick, my best mate, and I flattened together with a couple of other people, and he would always tinker in the backyard and make the odd piece for friends, and I'd send them in a Pinterest photo or something, and get some scrap wood and replicate it pretty much identical, and it's pretty impressive. But they're just one-off pieces on the sunny Sunday afternoons. And I thought at some point it was like, hey, we could turn this into something a little bit bigger potentially, or something that could potentially cater to people who would want a furniture piece made but don't necessarily maybe have the funds for really high-end, beautiful, bespoke pieces that you'd commonly find with furniture makers in New Zealand. And there are a lot of options of imported furniture that are often of a lower quality, or might not last as long, or they might not come in the right size or colour. And I've had a passion for a long time about sustainability, looking after the environment, and being particularly conscious of where do the materials come from that we surround ourselves with. And that will be our homes, and what do we make our streets out of, and what do we where do our clothes come from, and certainly furniture is one of those things that we use every single day. So I was like, hey, this is really interesting. What if we tried to source the most sustainable timbers we could find, use natural oils, and dabble in the backyard? And so I helped them for a few months leading up to the first lockdown, just as a hobby. And then lockdown hit, and we were stuck at home for a few weeks, and we're like, right, well, we've still got a stack of wood sitting over there, and there's not that much to do other than this, and it's pretty good weather, and so let's make a few pieces, and actually let's whip up a website and put it online. And there was also the same time when the New Zealand Made Facebook page, I'm not sure if you ever saw that, come up by Sarah Colcord. She originally set that up, which in the matter of, I think, 2 weeks turned into the biggest Facebook page in the country. I think it had 500,000 people who followed it over a couple of weeks, and that was all about showcasing New Zealand made products. So any item that a New Zealander would make at home, or particularly artisan products. It could be food or clothing or balms or whatever. And so we had a few photos and we put it on there, and I'm not sure what the recipe was or the algorithm, but for some reason we sort of got a heck of a lot of interest in a short amount of time as well, and we were one of the posts that sort of blew up a bit on there, and in the course of a week we also had a few thousand people that started suddenly following us, and we're like, holy cow, people were placing orders, and we don't even have a workshop, and we've got a $30 saw and a 5-year-old drill and some nails over there, and we're just tinkering around, and now we've got 12, 15 dining tables to make for people across the country because we said we could do it. And so when lockdown ended, we got a single car garage around the road and started making these tables, and we're like, right, we better take this seriously. And luckily I'd just finished a project overseas, so I'd quit my job, did a couple of months in a project overseas, and came back and was considering my next steps. So was able to essentially put a lot of energy and time into this. And Nick was a musician, so primarily worked in the weekends, so he had the weekdays available as well. So the single car garage, we started making these dining tables, and the orders kept rolling in. And I think it was 4 weeks later, we opened up the door one morning and we couldn't get to the back of the workshop. We were climbing over 2-3 layers of furniture that we'd made to try to get to the bathroom. And we're like, this is not going to work. We need something a little bit bigger. And we were lucky enough to find a landlord in Addington who had a space available that was bigger and more expensive than what we needed. And we told him that because it's more than what we can handle or need right now. But he really liked what we were all about, and he made it work for us. And so, 6 weeks after lockdown, we were suddenly into a commercial spot in Addington, and the space and the demands to turn it into something a bit more serious. So fast forward that, say 6 months, and we're in there with 5 staff and with contracts with retailers across the country, and we were on the breakfast show and live one morning, and that was awkward as heck actually, because we did a couple of practice rounds leading up to it. They said, right, here's the questions, and we'll give you a call the day beforehand and run you through it. And so we're like, right, okay, yep, we've got a pretty good idea, so we'll know what to answer here. And then when we were live, they asked completely different questions. So we sort of stuttered and undenied, but we knew what we were talking about, so it was all right. But yeah, I felt like we were definitely way out of our depth. We had no formal experience in manufacturing or making furniture. We grew very quickly. We had demand from contracts, from larger contracts. We had a team to manage, and it turned into a beast that certainly soaked up a good 80 hours a week of our time for numerous years then, and that was extremely difficult, to be honest. Really enjoyed it. It was very satisfying. We made some epic furniture, and we stuck true to our original goal of using New Zealand materials, New Zealand steel wherever possible, New Zealand timbers, natural oils, wrapping everything in compostable packaging, and using local talent as much as we could, and really not letting go of what we believed in from the little backyard concept that we had. But as the borders started opening back up post-lockdown, it was really a couple of years after lockdown that all the containers started coming back in. So there was a big influx again of cheaper furniture, which means our contracts with the retailers, they were still there, but there were so many other options that the orders slowed down significantly. And we were sort of reliant on that. We'd built our business around that. And with that slowing right down, we had to sort of innovate and pivot and be like, well, what do we do now? We could push in a number of different directions. Do we go more direct to market? Do we do commercial work? Do we do office furniture? This is all these different ideas that we dabbled with. But eventually we did decide to be like, well, then the recession came, was the end of last year essentially. We could see that coming and things had slowed down, and the things that we were trying were starting to work, but it wasn't the right time because everything was slowing down while we were trying to set up new things. So we downscaled, and we were like, well, save the business, downscale, and make sure that we can continue operating, and let's reassess and see where we're at. So we pulled into a smaller workshop again, which actually wasn't that much smaller, but yeah, we were living as a spot that is essentially the same size as the workshop we had in town, and reduced the size of our team a little bit, and we got extremely creative with the new angles. So presentations to interior designers, new commercial contracts with a different angle rather than going through retailers, and doubling down in our direct sales and marketing with our online store and social media management. And all in all, that's now started to really get some serious momentum. So we saw the quiet patch coming, got a little bit scared, scaled down, reduced our overheads, kept our heads down, and really worked our butts off to sort of reassess. And now we're back on the upside, you could say.
Yeah, amazing. And so you've got a couple of different product ranges though. You've got is the main residential dining table one of the core products?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So we make primarily it's dining tables, and that's happened because it's really hard to compete with smaller items. Like take a chair, for example, the amount of time it takes to make a chair. We can make chairs and we have made chairs, but people don't value a chair as much as they do a dining table. And surprisingly, it can take just as much time to make a dining chair as it is to make a dining table. So to have an appealing price point for I suppose you could say a more everyday New Zealander, we've naturally ended up gravitating towards larger items and specializing in that as well. And it actually doubles down when you get to big tables. So when you get to 3 meter, 4 meter, sometimes 5 meter tables, whether it's boardroom tables or large homes in Queenstown or co-working spaces or anything that requires something large, our efficiencies really kick in because it's not actually that much more effort or work for us to make a 2 meter table versus a 3 or 4 meter table, but the options are very limited for the larger items. So it's just naturally pushed into that, and also we're kind of passionate about it because it's the heart of the home. So from a residential point of view, that's where you sit around and eat dinner and connect and have friends over and create memories essentially. So I think out of all the furniture items in your home, the dining table is where you break bread with loved ones, and so there's more passion with that than there is maybe a coffee table or a bedside cabinet. We make those as well, but yeah, our energy sits in dining tables.
Amazing, so good. I absolutely love it. It was so cool seeing the workshop. It was one thing to see the designs. I think maybe I've first come across one in another office, but to actually see where they're made, it's super cool. Has the sort of the essence of the business, is that going to be carried through toward the next phase? Like I remember you were talking about the expansion plans and sort of where you're going.
Yeah, definitely. If anything, it's doubling down on the essence of the business. We that's what sort of gets us up in the morning as well. We could get up and make any furniture technically and sell it and get it out the door. But what probably excites us the most is being a bit of a leader or a pioneer in how things could be done differently. So what that means is really, I suppose one person said it really beautifully a couple of months ago. Said you have your imported furniture and you have your New Zealand made furniture, and then you have your innate level New Zealand made furniture. And so what that means, and we never even thought about it to this extent, but having furniture made in New Zealand, for starters, we already say thumbs up. And also some imported furniture is beautiful, and we're not saying it shouldn't be there at all. If someone really wants a very specific table from Italy or whatever it might be, it's like fair enough, it's awesome, and support those artisans there. But primarily, it's looking at supporting the local economy, so trying to keep our materials and as much of the manufacturing in New Zealand as possible. And so in order to be able to do that, it's like, well, where do these materials even come from? So you could have a New Zealand made dining table, but it might be made out of American oak, or it might be using tropical hardwood, or it might be also coated with polyurethanes or lacquers, which have their place and they will be there, but we think it's that little bit better to use natural coatings. And so as far as the next step of Innate, it would be to double down on that and transition that all of our steel framed furniture, or all the steel that we use, comes from New Zealand steel. And a lot of people won't even know that New Zealand makes steel, or that there are options. We once ordered a few sheets of steel from a local steel supplier, and we said, "Hey, can we please make sure we get New Zealand steel sheets?" They're like, "What? Why? Like, what does it matter?" It's like, steel is steel. We've got this stack and that stack, and it happens to be, it's like, oh, well, we want to support. There's a factory just southwest of Auckland in Glenbrook. That's where New Zealand Steel is based. The one place we make steel, New Zealand, and they employ about 2,000 people there, and they have an extremely epic story actually in terms of how the steel is made there. So they're close to the west coast there, where they extract the black iron sands off the beach. So they'll take iron sand off the beach, extract the iron, but then they'll put the sand back and contour it back to how it was, and then plant trees there so that there was a minimal impact. And that method of extracting the iron from the sand was developed in New Zealand in the 60s by the original founder. And it's a very unique and awesome story that we want to use the raw materials that are here, so it's not coming from all the way across the world if it doesn't have to, but also it's employing 2,000 people that are in Glenbrook and supporting their families. And then furthermore, the New Zealand government invested, can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was $132 million into the business a couple of years ago. And that investment alone was intended to, and is in the process of, improving the energy efficiency of the plant, which in itself is reducing the country's overall carbon emissions by 1%. And so these are things that the government is interested in pushing, and that the economy could very much need. Why would we not do that instead of ordering steel and that money goes overseas, and it comes from a number of other countries, but we're able to do that here. Same with timber options. Lots of timber comes from overseas. We have amazing timbers in New Zealand. Beech from the west coast. Where you're from, you'll know 99% of the coast is covered in beech. Really conscious of educating people around how that's managed, though, because as soon as you say, hey, native timbers, like, geez, don't touch our forests or anything, which is completely true, and we don't want to do the clear felling type of forestry that has happened here in the past. Most of the old houses here in Christchurch have remu framing. There's not much remu left because it used to just cut it all down and use it. Now, there is a Forest Act in New Zealand that manages that very closely. And through MPI, if you have a license, then over a very large area of say, beech forest, you are legally allowed to extract a very, very tiny percentage on an annual basis in order to supply the forestry industry of New Zealand with good quality native hardwoods. And that small percentage is really minuscule to the point where it does not affect the biodiversity of the forest at all. It might be something along the lines of a tree every 10 hectares per year. And they're often taken in small clusters, say 3, 4, 5 trees at a time. They'll be selected to be at the optimum time of their life cycle to be harvested, cut at the bottom, cut at the top so that the canopy falls down as food for the forest, and then often helicoptered out so that it's not being dragged through the forest. And every tree will have a tag with a number on it that MPI will be waiting when the helicopter lands, or at least there needs to be a record of where that tree stood, so that there's no excess being taken, and so that it's within a manageable amount that we can forever generate a good volume of good quality New Zealand native hardwoods without having to rely on overseas timbers. Because at the end of the day, you could say, well, it would be best to leave them alone entirely. And I've talked to some politicians, some prominent ones that say, well, actually, it's nice to, it would be best if we just don't touch it at all. Just don't go near it. We just want to protect this area. Well, that's nice. And, in an ideal world, potentially, even though it doesn't really affect the biodiversity of the forest or the flora and fauna there, but what's your furniture made out of? And where does your furniture come from? Like, do we stop building houses?
Yeah.
like we need to make something. So there's so much plastic around us, and there are so many materials that come from very far, that are not renewable, that are not sustainable, that don't have a cradle to cradle system in place. And unless we move towards a system where we can utilize the resources that come from our land, and can do that forever, then we're working in an unsustainable way. And so, long answer to your question here is yes, we are very much focused on working with different groups around the country, such as the Northland Totara Working Group, West Coast Beech sawmills, as well as plantation grown, say, oak from North Canterbury is an exceptional product that we like working with. We use a lot of recycled remus, so obviously anything that has already been cut down should be utilised. So first, try to minimise cutting down any further trees, use what is here. And then beyond that, well, where do you get your timber from? Unless we're going to stop using timber and replace it with something more regenerative, which doesn't really exist, then we're going to have to work with our forest and find a way that we can manage a forest so that it's not harmed, and that it's going to be able to supply us with good quality timber long term.
Before we get into the episode, I just want to say a big thanks to my mate Andrew here at Airwolf Forest Motor Company for supporting the episode and the podcast.
We specialise in high-performance British, American and European cars. As a listener and a supporter of David Mel's podcast, I'd invite any listeners to get in touch, have a look at our website, www.efmc.co.nz. Come and see what we've got out here and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, I guess if you think about the consumption of timber and you think about products and you think about the quality of what's being made, I'd love to think that we're heading toward an era of more quality, longer lasting products that don't need to be repurchased and replaced every 2 to 3 years. You know, things that I'm just looking at this table. I'm sure it's not that bad, but it's probably not going to last 100 years.
Probably not 100 years. It'll probably last a few years, and it depends on how it's used. But this is your very typical, MDF table. So there's probably formaldehyde in here, and it's got a plastic layer on top and on the outside. And don't mean to rip your table apart or anything. But
does this make you uncomfortable?
Not at all. No. This is around. Otherwise, I wouldn't be comfortable anywhere. No, but it is the most common stock standard. What's available here. But I think you are right. There is a big shift towards the awareness, not just of tables or furniture, but everything that we use.
Everything, yeah.
And not only for those that care about the longevity or care about the environment or care about the impact of what they purchase, but it's very much becoming something that people are proud of. Take thrift clothing, for example. Like 20 years ago, if your parents took you to a secondhand clothing store, you'd be embarrassed.
Totally.
Yeah. And now it's like, it's the thing.
It is.
And having a unique piece, having a quality piece that's made locally, that's going to last a long time is valued. And I think that same is going to apply more and more in all areas of life, where the throwaway culture or the get a cheap thing now, but it doesn't last very long. Well, we're still learning, because it's only been a couple of decades since we've been exposed to this massive influx of really cheap products, and I hope we learn fast, because it is tempting and it is easy when for example, this recent recession is practically every industry in New Zealand took a hit, and the one area that saw a spike was Temu,
right?
And I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't know the finer details of it, but it certainly is also what I saw, as well as what I was reading a lot about, and it makes a lot of sense. Is people are like very conscious of their spending, but they don't want to stop. So we're going to like, right, what's cheap? What's a fix now? What can I feel good about now? Having something convenient and something nice. But it's I think we are starting to learn as a whole, as a society, and the new generation that's coming through, I think cares a lot more about that as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's something that really interests me. Like even when you first picked up this mic and mentioned the sort of weight or quality of it, and I'd love to be a part of this movement that does value quality over quantity, and trying to get away from that throwaway culture.
That's right. Yeah, it's probably, I've been subconsciously, I guess I just, I value that. I'm like, right, nice. Well, this is something that's going to last. Like if you look after this could probably last the rest of your life. And it's very different to getting a $19 mic ordered from online. It's going to snap, or it doesn't, or the little receiver's going to break over time or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you just chuck it out and get another one. It's like, well, that's easy, but where does that go?
I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I was just like posing the question of what is cheap that's good? Does that exist? I don't know. Nothing. I couldn't really think of anything as a good example.
Cheap that's good in what context?
Product,
food?
I mean, even that's...
Well, I don't know. I I would really like to argue here that yes, you can certainly get good quality food that's cheap, and it's an interesting one because you often hear it coming out of America as well that it's much easier to buy unhealthy food. It's really cheap to buy a bag of chips. It's really cheap to get some 2-minute noodles and eat that and feed your family or feed yourself with that. And it's bloody expensive buying a capsicum. And for one capsicum, I could get 2 big packs of 2-minute noodles or 2 10-packs or whatever. And it's like, well, and that when you compare it like that, yes, it is extremely expensive maybe to eat something that's good or healthy. But I'd really like to challenge that, because I think that if you go a couple of steps deeper and actually you think about it and think, well, if I don't go to a supermarket for starters to buy my fruit and vegetables, and I'm going to a local grocer, there's a whole bunch around where I live, and over the weekend I was driving through a neighborhood and I saw another one and I popped by, and you buy what's in season. The amount you can get for $20 is out of control.
Radically different, isn't it?
It's just absolutely radically different. And then also you think, I feel, this is not anyone specific, but I think it's also the mindset of, well, it's too expensive to eat healthy or to get this good thing. It's cheaper to have the unhealthy thing. Potentially is also the same people that are spending $20 on McDonald's. And so if you've $20 on McDonald's worth of nutrients or worth of a food that's going to fill you for X amount of time, it's high GI. It's going to absolutely spike your glucose. You're going to be full for a little while, but it's not going to feed your soul in the sense of nourish your body. And I don't know if that's really particularly good value. And if you're looking at it just from a being full point of view and taking out the nutrient components, well, potatoes are very cheap. And there are root vegetables you can buy all day long. Carrots are cheap. Try eating 3 carrots and not be full. And those things will hit you like a ton of bricks. So it's just like, yeah, it's possible, but I think it just requires really being conscious of it, caring about it, thinking about it, talking about it with people, looking into it. There's no need for deep research anymore into it either. It's quite easy to get the answers. ChatGPT, hey, I've got $45 budget for the week. I want to eat healthy. It's October. I'm in Christchurch. I want to make sure I get some proteins in and can you give me a food plan for the week? It's like, oh yeah, sure, no worries. Well, you go buy a 2 kg bag of dried chickpeas for starters and off you go and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And so I think it can be done, but you have to really think about it a bit. It should be the common practice though. And really big fan of what they do over in Australia is subsidise fruit and vegetables, and there should be a sugar tax. Don't know if you've heard of blue zones ever before at all.
I have, yes, yeah.
And yeah, so like the only area in the world that has become a new blue zone as opposed to being historically one is Singapore as of late. And a couple of decades ago, they put a sugar tax on. And that's one of the things they just like, look, everyone keeps going about their business, but we're just going to tax these couple of unhealthy food items, and we're going to subsidize these couple of healthy food items, and then everything, we'll see what happens in a couple of decades. Well, everyone's healthier, living longer, and they're more nourished. So it's part of this overall picture. I know we're talking about furniture here, but it's I think a lot bigger than that. If we're really conscious about everything that's around us, the food we put in our bodies, the quality of air we have around us, the furniture we have around us, not just from a sustainability point of view, but from a health point of view. A lot of furniture, if you unpack it, it'll have this brand new smell. You take the plastic off and it's got this woof. It's like, oh, right, when you get something, you screw it all together, most likely formaldehyde and 100 other different chemicals that are making it straight into your airways and your bloodstream. The new car smell, the new house smell, the new furniture smell, all these things, they're impacting our health significantly. And you wouldn't think to talk about dining tables from a health or unhealthy point of view. It's just a stagnant thing, but actually it is. And it can be made out of either natural materials that don't harm you and your family, or they can be made out of materials that do off-gas VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and fill the house with chemicals essentially that everyone's breathing in. And especially, the younger you are, the more vulnerable you are. So babies and young children, going into a brand new house that's been freshly painted with synthetic carpets and with brand new furniture everywhere, and this whole smells there, and then there's freaking air fresheners and fly sprays and everything floating around. It's like, man, it's just a cocktail.
Yeah, I didn't expect this kind of conversation, but it gets you it gets you thinking though, doesn't it? And I think even on another level, we're talking about the people in your environment and how that's another factor.
Yeah,
it's something that's hugely fascinating to me, and there's all kinds of tangents on this podcast. There's no rules. We can talk.
Nice.
We can go in any direction you want to go.
Like
in.
I asked, should we do any prep for this? You're like, no, I just got some questions.
No, it's definitely best to go with the flow. But like the people around you are probably an extension of that in a roundabout way, right?
Yeah.
If you're around a group of super negative, toxic people, that's obviously going to affect you.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we were saying earlier, right? It's the age-old thing of you're sort of the average of the 5 people around you. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And, some people are more sponges than others. We were saying we're both quite spongy people.
Very spongy.
Might have to be extra careful who we surround ourselves with, and other people can hold themselves potentially a bit more and not be so affected. But I think no matter what, you will be affected by the way people speak and act and talk and walk and how they view things and what they eat and everything. You can imagine you plonk yourself in the middle of a fast food court in LA, or you plonk yourself in the Tibetan mountains with a bunch of monks. It's like you can be as stoic as you like, but you're probably going to behave somewhat differently.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd never thought about it in terms of the level of sponge or the amount that you're affected by that. But I've always noticed that about myself, is that I don't know the reference data here, but I feel like I am more affected than some others, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's good to analyze and I think be aware of, because it was only a couple of years ago probably that some people around me were highlighting the fact that I was, replicating phrases from people around without even noticing, and just behaving more like the people around me, like, oh, that's something that person would do or say, or if someone eats who I'm either living with or spending a lot of time with, eating a certain way, next thing you know, you realize you're eating that, and you're like, oh, I didn't consciously make this decision. I would like to be in charge of what I think and how I view things, and the way that I speak, and certainly what I eat and all these types of things. And I think I would like that. I would like to think that most people would want that. They want to make their own decisions. But it's really easy to be a sponge for some of us.
Do you think it's a spectrum? Do you think it's like a 0 to 10 scale? Like
I feel like it is.
Yeah, 10 is highly susceptible, whereas a 0 is like, they might absorb a little bit, but nowhere near as porous as, say, a 10.
Yeah, I think so. And I'd say maybe it's partially genetic, and there must be an element of it that's to do with how you've been brought up. But yeah, I'd say that's there's definitely a spectrum there. And maybe some people really like to be sponges, and it's like, well, I don't have to think. I can just absorb what people do around me, and they seem to be surviving. And I guess everyone's different. But yeah.
I noticed when I came back from Canada after living there for 8 years, I guess I didn't notice it because you can't notice some things, right? If you're in the jam jar, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I came back with an accent apparently.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess that's an example of how, two people could go live in a foreign country. One might have a really, noticeable accent. One might not even come back with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the accent's definitely a funny one. I think, some people will move to a different country, and New Zealand's a great example because we're a melting pot and people from all over the world come here. I've met people that have moved here when they're, say, 15, and they have an extremely strong accent, and it just never changes, and they might even be trying. Good examples, I guess, I moved here when I was 10 from Holland, from the Netherlands, and my sister was 13. She still has somewhat of an accent, and I don't. But when I visit my family in America, some of them in Texas, I'll turn up with a Kiwi accent and get laughed at. But after about a week, I'm nearly fluent Texan.
Really?
It's because I spent some time there when I was younger, and so it's maybe part of my makeup that I can adapt. I'm not sure, but I don't try to at all. There's zero energy or effort goes into this. And in fact, if I try not to, if you'd ask me to have an accent right now, it's like I'm not good at all. At doing
It'd sound
accents.
fake.
Yeah, if it sound very fake, can't do it, not at all. But plonk me in the middle of a place where people speak a certain way, I'll just start just adapting. I think it's partially to be understood and to be relatable. It's easier if you speak in language as an example, but it's not just language, I think. Lights are off.
No, we're all good. I'm just going to disarm that alarm.
Yeah, I just hear the alarm.
We don't stop recording though.
Okay.
And there's no editing, so
I like it. You let the alarm go off if you want some excitement.
disarmed. How good. Technology. So good.
That is exceptional.
Yeah, I found it took me years and years and years when I first moved to Canada. They just couldn't understand me. The locals.
Yeah.
Ordering coffee, ordering something.
It's just a hassle.
They'd be like, "What? What are you trying to say?" And just learning to really lean into that accent.
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise, it was just too annoying.
So it's out of a necessity.
A necessity, yeah. The word chameleon comes to mind.
Yeah.
With what you were talking about before.
But still, there must be some sort of spectrum as well in terms of how easy that is, or how much that how that's even possible. Because some people just can never lose their accent, and maybe we'd never lose ours if we went to Canada either. But some element of adaptability, which is also somewhat annoying because I don't control it. They go different places and voice changes. It'd be nice if you can. Some people do accents perfectly and they have control over that. I'm certainly not in that camp.
No. What about your level of chameleonism, if that's a word? Do you feel comfortable in different environments, different situations? Do you feel yourself being able to adapt to, say, a tradie environment or an office environment or an artsy environment?
Yeah. I think I've learned over time that it takes a little while, especially if it's an environment I haven't been in before. But yeah, pretty much a chameleon in a few ways. Especially, if if you're dressed a certain way, you've been surrounding yourself in a particular world for a certain amount of time, and then you just real black and white plonk yourself in a completely different place. That's different than if you have somewhat of a smooth transition where you're going to either an event or a place for a certain amount of time, and you might already mentally be thinking about that. Not prepping to be a chameleon, but I've noticed that I don't know. I think recently I've also been kind of anti-chameleon because as much as it's good to be relatable and it's good to be able to communicate and connect with people in different scenarios, I feel to some extent if you're not careful you can also lose some of your own identity. So it's who are you yourself if you're just adapting to your environment all the time? Then what's actually you? It's
a good point. Very good point.
So it's handy in some ways, but also, careful not to overdo it. So.
Don't want to over chameleonize yourself. Yeah. Risky. Yeah, I find it whenever I go over to the West Coast and we're down at the local restaurant or pub or whatever, and it's just such a different environment than here. It's the same, right? It's only 3 hours away. Yeah. Same country, but yet just such a different.
The coast is a great example.
Different vibe. Different world. Yeah. And I don't know what that is. I guess it's perhaps partly based on size of the population. I don't know. Yeah,
and also I guess more remote seems to be not stuck in time, so to speak, but somewhat this must be less need for pushing fast with the progress of cities, to keep it simple, I suppose. So the smaller the town you go, the less it's probably changed over the last, say, few decades.
That's a good point.
Even funny you mentioned that, Jamie, the friend who I introduced to you on the West Coast. We did a stag do with him on the coast a few years ago, and his stag do was starting in Hokitika and went south, and we stopped at every pub along the way.
Wow, there's a few of them.
Well, we stopped at 8 or 9 I think, along the way. And they're all so vastly different. And it was like going into an absolute, be a time machine, really, because there was pubs that were built in the 70s. Nothing changed since they built it, as far as I could tell. And there was a pub from the 1800s somewhere, and it looks like nothing had changed since that was built either, and everything in between. And it was, it was a cultural experience, because, everyone was friendly, and it was I highly recommend, basically, if you're going to do some sort of pub crawl. Not that I do them at all anymore, but doing the West Coast and popping into the different spots, it's just, it's a time machine that that you might lose a little bit in the bigger cities.
Yeah, I do find people are quite friendly over there. I find that, I think it's just more common or likely that there'll be a random conversation, whereas I don't often get that here in Christchurch. And whether it's the places I'm going to or if it's just the fact that I'm a coaster, I don't know, it just seems a bit
interesting. I wonder if that's also not a spectrum, but a scale, because coming from Holland and having family in America and spending bits of time in the Northern Hemisphere, I often forget, and I've been back quite a few times, I forget the warmness that is here, and it's become normal. Like, this is just how people behave and talk to each other and greet people or whatever, and it's not like everyone's like massively going out of their way to be super friendly when you're on the street or anything. It's just friendly, and then going back to some of these other countries, I'm like, oh wow, geez, people seem pretty sharp and abrupt and whatnot. And then you come back here and like, oh man, this is nice. So the fact that you say that between the West Coast and Christchurch, but I'm noticing that from, say, other countries compared to Christchurch as well, it's almost like the more remote you get, at least in New Zealand, the more warm and friendly.
I wonder if it's got to do with the like village-based culture, or like the smaller you get, the less you have the ability to hide, and that you've got to preserve your integrity and you've got to be good, otherwise you'll get cut out from the tribe. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point too, because I find it extremely intriguing to understand, the way we evolved and how we're wired in certain ways, and how that in many ways doesn't fit into the society that we've built. And not to say that it's wrong, but just it's very helpful to be aware of it. We certainly didn't evolve in big cities. And I think on that particular point, we were probably reliant when living in tribes on our neighbours a heck of a lot more, and probably on the reputation or the respect of the people in your direct surroundings, and looking after each other. If someone needs something, you look after them, and they're going to look after you. It's quite different if you can call a police officer or call an ambulance or whatever else. So it's like, evolutionarily speaking, we probably needed to really keep that close. So maybe in the smaller towns, it's just it's still a lot more there.
Maybe,
and I like that.
Yeah,
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons for doing this podcast and continuing is interesting conversations, exploring these kind of ideas, because I find that with that conversation, especially with new people, you are able to come up with different thoughts and theories on things. And so, especially with AI being more of a mainstream thing now, perhaps there's going to be less conversation. And so I'm hugely fascinated by different people's opinions and theories on things.
Yeah. What do you mean less conversation?
Well, I guess I've just noticed myself using, say, AI a lot more in a conversational way. And so whereas Google was very much just one question, I find myself digging a bit deeper into the exploration of thoughts or brainstorming or disseminating information using AI. Mm-hmm. So I just wonder if that's going to limit our human interaction. I don't know.
Yeah.
Especially as it gets more conversational. Yeah.
Yeah, I started to do that as well. And it's ChatGPT function where you can just speak to it now and it talks back to you and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. What about this? I'll be driving home from work and just be like, well, hey, I want to accomplish this. I want to plan this. What do you suggest? Oh, right. It's like these conversations that as it's going to get extremely good, it's going to have less need to have these conversations with other people. And even though you want to, if that requirement is reduced, then Yeah, you have to be really careful. So good on you for pulling people together.
Trying. Yeah. I don't know. I think, I think, as you say, it's like, it's not always perfect, but if it can provide that one thing or that one point of view that you might not have considered, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful tool. Are you using it much outside of ChatGPT?
A little bit, not really, to be honest. As it pops up, I mean, I suppose product photos, changing the background of a product photo. So, our iPhones are good enough to take product photos. They have an extremely good camera, but then the background's often not great. Well, 6-9 months ago, you couldn't really do much with it. I've been trying for 2 years. It's like, I want to take this photo, make it a white background, and then once you take that, put that into some sort of setting. It's been really interesting seeing the evolution of that because, so 12 months ago, it just could not do it at all. There was no way. And even putting a white background on it, it would already have to have a lot of contrast between the product and what was behind it, and then it could do a pretty good job. And this is assuming that you're not also loading it into, say, Photoshop and you're tweaking it further. You just want to keep it extremely simple. Well, even Shopify now, you can load a product photo where the background has lots of stuff going on, and it does a pretty damn good job at just taking the background out. And then you can type in what kind of background you want, but it can only do really basic backgrounds. So using like industrial warehouse is a good look that we're using at the moment. It looks actually somewhat similar to our workshop, but it's just a lot cleaner.
Right.
Lots of all the color in the background. So
it's
just a nicer experience to oversee them all. And it manages the lighting well in that sense. So the product stays the same, it cleans it up, but it's just that step above from having a white background. So we're finding that really good. And I think as time goes on, we will be utilizing that as it gets more developed and really creating images from these product photos that are fully staged. On Thursday morning, we have a meeting with somebody who has a business specifically around AI, essentially CGI. So we provide your product photo, and they'll take that photo, turn it into a render that is photorealistic, but it's not built from scratch. It utilizes the actual features that you have, so it's not fake in that sense. So because it's still a real photo, but refine it and make it super crispy sharp, improve any lighting. So it's pretty much a new rendered image, and then can turn that into a 3D image, can turn it into a video, could create a whole space behind it,
Wow.
could do whatever, and this is photorealistic. So take the real product, because I'm very conscious of don't want to turn into a website or a business that has a whole bunch of product images that aren't real. Understand that can be there's a space for that, and that's sometimes just the most feasible or logical for certain products. But for us, I think because we're so much down into like the character of the timber and where it comes from, and look at these knots and this timber looks like this, you can't lose that. So taking the real photo, but then blending it with, it is AI in the sense, because this is not built from scratch. It's using AI to build these scenes. It's using AI to refine these models, to render them, to make them look really good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think how much time and energy, money that would save.
Oh yeah. Well, again, we looked at this less than a year ago, and to have someone create a rendered, say, dining room that's overlooking an ocean or whatever it might be, it's you'd be looking at quite a few $100s to build that from scratch. Actually, I'll simplify that. Just the product by itself. So, say a table, to draw that in a CAD program and to have it rendered without any background, but to have it look really good with great textures and everything. The price of that over the last 12 months has probably come down like 75%.
Wow.
So now it's starting to be pretty reasonable for us, being like, hey, maybe we do a whole catalog and actually just simplify this, because as much as the iPhone camera is good, it is limited to some extent as well, and it depends on lighting on that day and how things are reflecting in the workshop, and yeah. I'm going to throw another spatter out here, actually, because there's the other side of it again, just like we talked about before, with things being real, and it reminds me of like marketing videos or photos that a lot of them do a lot better if they're relatable. And so if they actually seem like, hey, that's a photo I could have taken, or that's a video I could have taken, as we've come to like refining everything so much in billboards for the last couple of decades pretty much now, everything's perfected to the last little strand of hair or blade of grass is just like absolutely perfected. You can just look at it and be like, that looks really nice, but that's not what I'm going to get. Like that's not realistic, and it's not real. So keeping an element of relatability and realness to it is starting to see actually more often better results than the fully polished images. And you're better off just taking a phone and just showcasing what you do, because people are like, cool, that's real. And maybe that's even going to get doubled down now that we're starting to blur the lines between what's real and what's not in terms of photo and video content. So I wonder what that's going to look like in terms of like a check mark of, hey, this has not been messed with, and this is actually what it is. I'm sure there's lots of people who know more about that than I do, but I wonder how that works for products anyway. There must be a lot in play for protecting people, obviously, but products, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess look at the volume of, say, like UGC content, user-generated content, and how that just makes it real and relatable, whether it's like a restaurant or like a product. But yeah, I guess it's sort of like an informal review, like whether it's, paid influencer or not paid, but whatever, right? It just makes it a bit more relatable rather than the, as you say, the highly polished, highly engineered, like so perfect that it doesn't look like you'd use the product, right? Yeah. So, yeah, interesting where we're heading. Because I'm sure that'll just be a setting in time, won't it? Like render this, make it look perfect, but not too perfect.
Yeah, that's right.
Make it look like
this particular function, it's just like give it some flaws, and I mean you can. That's already, I suppose, happening like even in the last few weeks, and seeing photorealistic images that have been generated by AI that have like a bit of blurriness over here, and more flaws and freckles or whatever it might be, just so it's not so fully polished. So it's it can already do it. So all you have to do is ask for it to do it, and I guess we're already there.
Have you seen those architectural renderings pop up on your social media? Like the really epic, like lounge rooms with like snow on the outside, and it's so nice. Like it could be real, but I don't think it's real. Yeah.
It could just be real if it is a really beautiful setting and someone has a really good camera and they got all the lighting right and they did a tiny bit of photoshopping, maybe, but more likely someone just typed in a prompt.
It's likely not real. Yeah. This is just too perfect.
Yeah, especially when there's a whole feed of vastly different, equally perfect images.
Yeah. It just makes you think about the era we're heading into, though, doesn't it? When we're questioning what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
Especially with people and commentary being made or things being said. Mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, for now, we at least know that this is
real.
We're going to have to hold on to that, I guess.
But, in 10, 20 years' time, who knows what?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, it'll be indistinguishable. It's a matter of time. And it's just that's just Moore's Law. Well, we're going faster than Moore's Law now. But yeah, it's I won't dive too deep into that, but essentially I have some opinions around just how potentially far this already is or could go, and it's a bit scary to think. It's like, well, within our lifetime we're going to be able to experience what is currently VR, but to a point where we can't tell the difference between real life and VR life. How does that impact furniture making? I don't know.
Everything.
It impacts everything. Yeah. Certainly it's going to be great for someone to be able to maybe sit at a table and see what it looks like in their lives. Like you can already take your phone and be like, hey, load your product and see how it looks in your space, because it's going to be a certain size, and how does it look color-wise and whatever else that already exists with your phone. Well, it also already exists with VR. You can put your VR goggles on and you can see a product in your space. And the quality of that is just skyrocketing. So, not very far away, if not pretty much already there. You're going to be able to put those on and be like, hey, if I want this product, such as I'm interested in this dining table. Currently, it's like we've got some photos, iPhone photos on the website, and we can send samples and things. But people still want this tangible experience, right? It's like lady today ordered a couple of Remu or Oak, not sure. She's in Auckland, ordered a couple of samples so she can touch it and see it and be like, okay, well, actually I want this one.
Yeah.
But that tangible experience will come a point where you can do that digitally. We're a wee way off though.
We are.
I think we'll be sending samples for a few years yet.
Yeah. Do you guys, just on a tangent, do you guys still do the workshop tours?
Do the what, sorry?
Workshop tours. Did I see that on your website?
Yeah. Well, workshop appointments.
Workshop appointments, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's cool.
So primarily people contact us online. We can answer all their questions online. The website is pretty much all your answers taken care of. If you want to feel in touch, which people still do, and totally fair enough, I think I would want to as well, then there's a couple of options. We can either send you a sample, and they're really cheap. We just make it so that people don't order 50 samples for the sake of it, or just make a time to come visit our workshop. And so we just have that link to our calendar. There's certain times throughout the week, and then we just get a notification. Oh, right. Louise is coming 2 p.m. on Thursday. Cool, look forward to it. And so we barely ever make appointments over the phone for people to come, or over email for them to visit us, because we've made sure on the website on nearly every page it says, hey, come visit the workshop, make a time. So they just say, oh, well, this is my time of day available. And I mean, it's nothing revolutionary. Lots of people have had that for appointments for a few years, but it works extremely well for us, because then we can also make sure that we're prepared for them, and in the sense that we're not that someone's available there to actually greet them, and not in the middle of like coating 6 tables and everyone's covered in oil, or we're off in meetings for new suppliers or anything like that. So as soon as we put another appointment in the calendar, then that gets blocked out. And so that definitely, people love that. And I'd say 99% of the time when people turn up to make an appointment, they definitely go ahead with the order. It's just the last thing that they just want to probably make sure that we're real, and just check it out. But they're always pleasantly surprised. They're like, wow, it's like, man, it smells good in here, because like we don't use any chemicals in our workshop, so we don't have to use masks, or it's just a pleasant environment, really.
And what's the general sentiment of the person? Is it like amazement? Is it like, fuck, this is awesome? Yeah, as you say, keen to go through the order, but are they general? I'm guessing they're probably people that resonate with you guys, and they're generally, is that how it goes?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good vibe.
Yeah. So because we do both like medium end and high end. So we make like $10,000 tables if people requested, and last week someone inquired for a $13,000, was like a huge glass tabletop. Well, still, even with something like that, we have a local glass guy that we work with, and we can get a piece of glass any thickness, any size cut, and then we can practically make anything. So if people have wild requests, that can be done, and people do come to us for that. However, what has been our focus for quite a while is sort of middle ground tables, I suppose. So we have people that are looking at major box retailers, and they're doing what we'll quite often find as couples in their 30s, 40s, 50s, probably primarily. We'll be doing the rounds on a Saturday, and they're going to the big box stores or on the main streets around Christchurch. And then there's us, because there's not really too many. They don't usually end up finding the artisan makers, because they're such incredible woodworkers that are often small woodworking shops that make really bespoke, really beautiful stuff. But that's probably not on the price point of like people who might be looking for a dining table from one of your major box stores. So we do often get comments of like, wow, this is a really different experience than just like walking through like a big warehouse and just like choosing a piece of furniture. It's like, man, it's like the owners are greeting us, and it's like there's oil on your hands, and like, on the tools part of the time as well, again now, and really enjoying that. As much as we have pretty lofty goals and definitely taking this business to some pretty awesome places, it's there's something about spending some time of the week on the tools and actually working with the material itself. So people really appreciate that they come into the workshop, they see all this half-made furniture that's in the process. It's like kind of a blend between a backyard garage workshop and a production line and / factory, because it's big enough that there's quite a bit going through, but it's also small and artisan enough that everything's customized and everything's done on a pretty pretty unique basis for that individual customer. Yeah.
It's a cool story. It's cool. I just love everything about it. Like, it's so good, and I guess having awareness and there's, like, what am I trying to say here? I would be interested to know how many people would even know about your business, right? And so I just think of an opportunity or a platform like this to tell a story, and somebody that's out there maybe listening to this is in the market for a table or some furniture. They go to your website and they're like, shit, this is cool. And then it just creates that slow amount of movement and traction. And I just love that about the podcast and about people that are doing something a bit different.
Definitely, yeah. Really love your support and your passion for what we do. We're starting to build a pretty good name for ourselves by now. So I've been in business for 5 years, and we've had quite a lot of exposure over that time. We've had a lot of free exposure from time to time, whether it's on TV or the radio or in the press or whatever else, and billboards, and we've had lots of things thrown at us over time. And then we've also done a lot of social media marketing over the last 5 years, and we've been really consistent with that. And we also have worked quite diligently at improving our SEO ranking. So we started, like, at the start of this year, we actually stopped all of our Google ads. We were running Google ads for a couple of years, and Facebook ads. I'm like, wow, it's really like dead quiet. We're actually going to put these funds elsewhere to improve the business in other ways. And we found that people are just finding us on Google anyway, it's actually, I remember 3 years ago being like, man, it's impossible to get anywhere near the top here. If people in Christchurch are looking for a furniture store, all these big shops are just turning up. But we very regularly now get people contact us for something, and we'll always ask them, hey, how'd you find us? And primarily it is Google. And I think one of the things that really helped with that is did a bit of reading and don't know if the algorithm's still the same or if it's changed, but at least when we looked into it, it's when you get 50 positive reviews that you click into a new category and the algorithm picks up on, you're like, okay, you've got some momentum here. People like what you do. We're going to prioritize you a bit more. So we just asked the next 50 customers, hey, can you give us a review? We've got like 65-star reviews now and nothing else. So it's just like bang,
interesting.
Bang. Ever since we did that, people are just finding us on Google. So whatever they're typing in, making sure obviously there's keywords are all over our website. But any opportunity like this to have a chat with you, I mean, this is not really a promo thing for Innate or anything. I like you hanging out with you. We had a good lunch the other day, and just keen to see the space and connect with you in the same way that I was talking about. You are like the 5 people you spend the most time with, and certainly love the way that you're an ambitious man and what you strive for. But certainly it's also very good to any opportunity to let people know that we exist, because the other thing is, so often people say, wow, we had no idea you existed. And it's just like, yeah, we get that a lot. When people find out we exist, they're amazed and like, well, they just don't know. So as much as we're like creeping our way up here and there, and we're doing our best to let people know that we exist. It's a big market. And unless you have a massive marketing budget, then it is really tricky. But we are starting with Digital Simple this week, actually.
Sweet.
Next week. So definitely looking forward to that, because we're very conscious of where we put our marketing dollars, but have quite a lot of faith in the team there.
Yeah, cool. Nice. I like it. Plug for Digital Simple.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't ask for it. I know they wouldn't mind.
No, not at all. No, we recorded a 3rd episode last week, James and I.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was cool. He's pretty keen to stay in the top 10 / get to our number 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But competitive, right?
Who's number 1 at the moment?
Dan Hood currently.
Oh, yeah.
By a bit of a big margin. So.
I don't even know there was a competition. I would have prepped for this.
No prep's the key.
Yeah.
No prep's good prep. What's your predictions, just to put you on the spot, for the next 12 months? So if we were sitting down here, 2025, end of October, business, personal, life, society, AI, you can take this wherever you want to take it.
Okay, that's pretty big.
Because a lot can happen in 12 months, right?
Yeah. I'm extremely interested to see what happens over the next 12 months. I think we're going to actually get to some pretty great heights. And the last 5 years have been like the hardest 5 years that have been the foundation of what is about to come. Like I said, we weren't even furniture makers, so we've had to learn everything from scratch. It's great that we grew really quickly and that we were in over our heads basically because it's forced us to like learn so much essentially. We've built a really good brand and a reputation now, and we've got some solid momentum, and people are starting to really know about us. And we know just hands down that we have a really exceptional product that there is a gap in the market for. And what that product is not just dining tables, but as far as dining tables are concerned, it's just really good quality dining tables that are customizable, made in New Zealand timbers, natural oils, a range of relatively straightforward, simple designs. We can, like I said, we can make super bespoke things, and we can slot that into our system. But what we really specialize in is like, how can we keep the designs smart and streamlined and simple that they are efficient to produce, and do quite a few of the same design, but choose your length, choose your width, choose your height, choose your color, change this, change that, but it's all within this system that we've developed. So it's not one-off pieces. They're all kind of the same pieces. So how I see that over the next 12 months is the efficiencies of that are really starting to kick in, and people are really, really valuing that they can choose their own size, they can choose their own color, and now it's really good quality and it's not a crazy price. And combine that with this new exterior range that we launched last week, which is pretty much revolutionary, to be honest. Exterior furniture in New Zealand is bloody difficult to manufacture in the sense of how it stands up to the elements. I think pretty much anyone who's ever bought an outdoor set will know that. It's like, unless you're going to like get out the brush once a year and give it an oil, and that's also on top of buying a good quality set in the first place, it's probably going to last only a couple of years, or you just have to put up with it probably not so looking so great. Some items last a bit longer, but really overall you have to pay quite a premium for that. So we've even heard stories of like local furniture manufacturers that used to make exterior furniture would send like 20 sets down to Queenstown, and 18 of them come back and they said, look, we've had enough of outdoor furniture. Like, this is just the fast change, and like it'll rain in the morning and it's like crazy hot in the afternoon. The temperature, the humidity, timber twists and warps. It's pretty hard. And a lot of the imported furniture is really quite lightweight, like aluminium that you can sort of lift up, and it's super windy. And so essentially we've come up with this concept, this super simple system after trialing these other ways as well, of full timber furniture, steel frame with timber built into it, to make an essentially, quote unquote, can't probably say bulletproof table that's going to last decades without any maintenance, that looks like as good as a designer indoor table, that still can be custom made to different sizes and colors, and that no one else is doing at all, is New Zealand steel legs. So it could be a range of different designs. Then we build a steel tray, and then New Zealand doesn't make it yet. At some point, if it does, it'd be awesome. But at this stage, the most durable product that we can get that's going to last, like I said, decades, you can hand it down generations, is Italian porcelain. So a really beautiful big slab of Italian porcelain that sits inside the steel tray. And this stuff's used for cladding and outdoor tiling and all sorts across the country. And it's resistant to practically everything: frost, heat, UV, you name it. And it looks like the luscious indoor table you've ever seen, and it's an outdoor table.
Wow.
It's wild. And that's probably the biggest thing, that when we did a release at the Home Idea Centre last week on Mandeville Street here, that all these interior designers we're commenting on, and other people from the public as well, saying the biggest thing I'm just looking for is an outdoor table that I don't have to maintain. I don't want to have to get a brush out every year. I don't want to have to see it splitting and warping. I don't want it to blow in the way in the wind. I just want to have to not think about it, and it's just there and it looks good, and I can forget about it for the next few years. And so we have pretty much cracked that. And yeah, so that'll be our big push over the next couple of months. And what we believe is something that's really going to propel us into a whole new chapter as far as New Zealand made furniture is concerned.
Amazing. Do you have a chair options with that?
Benches. So
benches, yeah.
So we specialize in benches, and the reason for that is as well, we can make chairs, but benches are actually really popular. A lot of people will buy one bench and then get other chairs from the other side. And we can make benches with backs as well.
Oh, yeah.
But from a price point of view, it's like to make one bench is probably not that much more expensive than to make one chair. So it's like you can have 4 people sitting on one person. So we're still thinking about efficiencies. Again, if someone really has a requirement for a specific type of thing, yeah, we can make that. But yeah, big dining tables, indoor and outdoor, benches, any shape, size and color, lots of styles. Yeah, that's pretty much our wheelhouse.
What's the price range for those outdoor tables?
Outdoor tables start at $3,500. So they're the higher price point than our dining tables, but a lower price point than still lots of imported options that you'll see at some of the higher end stores. And the main thing that we like to I suppose highlight there is that if you can get an outdoor set, say or outdoor table maybe for $1,000 somewhere, and it lasts 3 years, and you got to do that 10 times over the next 30 years, well, it's $30,000. Or you spend $3,500 and it's going to last a lot more than 30 years. So it's a long-term game, and that is a little bit something that it depends on who's purchasing. If they're focused on filling a spot quickly and doing that at a low price point, maybe it's not your first table that you'd purchase, or maybe it is, because the sooner you do it, the wiser, because then that's your table for life. You can hand it down to children. It's that good.
Yeah, totally. Especially when you think about the packaging and the freight and the waste that comes from that lower priced option, right?
Yeah.
Come from disposal of it.
Oh yeah, and I have to at least mention as well, like the timber. The timber options that are sometimes used for some of these items is really, really questionable, and not all of it is, and a lot of it is totally sustainably sourced or it's plantation grown. But there is still to this day a heck of a lot of tropical rainforests being cut down, illegally logged. Even look at Quila as a prime example. There are sustainably sourced or ethically sourced Quila options, and so I'm not saying stay away from Quila entirely. Just check with wherever you're getting your deck or your furniture from, where is it actually coming from? Because to this day, there are plenty of Quila trees being cut down illegally, West Papua and other places around the world, that are displacing indigenous communities, that are having environmental disaster, just to get this really beautiful hard-wearing timber, which is awesome. And that's, the type of timber that you don't have to oil every year, might be every 3 or 5 years. It's epic. But the quite a few countries around the world that have essentially banned it, or at least banned it unless you have some sort of certification. If you want to really geek out on it and go as far as something like an FSC certification, which is a heck of a lot better than not having one, certifications are a great way to make sure that there is some intent from the buyer that the product comes from a ethical source or a sustainable source, but it's actually no guarantee. And I've been personally exposed to and witnessed timbers being imported from overseas with certifications on it that when you actually trace them down and try to find where that certification came from is bogus. And so you might still be getting an item that's made using materials that you wouldn't purchase if you knew the impact that it was having on that country or that area. But you do, because it's got this stamp or this tick or this whatever it might be. And it's yeah, it's not real. And not saying it's not the case. Lots of the time it is good, and we have to have some sort of regulatory process in place to make sure that these things are managed. So I'm not shitting on them entirely. We just need to be really conscious of like, well, which ones, and ask the questions, and don't just take it on face value just because something is. I mean, think about the food in the supermarket, the amount of stuff there's the heart health tick or whatever else. It's like, I'm pretty sure like Cocoa Puffs probably has heart health. Like, it's come on, man. It's like, yeah, you got to, I think for yourself a little bit. And again, it goes back down to the food. Like, can you get anything cheap? Well, can you feed yourself on a budget? Oh, you can. You just have to also, I think, be critically analyzing everything and well, not everything, but enough to feel like you've thought about it.
Yeah, it does. Does this make sense at a fundamental level? Yeah. Does it come from a packet? Is it saying 100%, beef?
Yeah.
There's some red flags to watch out for.
Pretty much.
So the outdoor range, 12 months, how good?
Yeah. And then I guess personally, well, I mean, this relates very much to Innate as well, but I think from any founder could maybe relate to this, but starting a business, extremely difficult. Right off of the ground, depending on if it's an industry you're already experienced in, that would help a bit, or if you've got really good mentors, that would help a bit. Or if you have funding, it might help a bit. Could also hinder you a bit because you have to learn the hard way. But no matter what, I think at least for us, it's been extremely difficult. And one of the mistakes that I made early on was not looking after my health. So I was like, right, okay, we've got all this stuff going on. We just have to just work our absolute butts off, and that's the focus. And it's only for a little while, and then I'll worry about looking after myself a bit later because I need to quickly eat something, and I don't have time to go either work out physically or look after mindfulness or get enough sleep or anything like this. And it spiraled pretty bad. I was like a highly operating just ball of chaos, I'd say. And I got really overweight, and I got really depressed, and I was full of anxiety, and yeah, it's was somehow able to keep everything rolling because that was the one focus, but I've massively suffered, and I think eventually also the business was suffering because I wasn't able to show up as 100%. So what has happened over the last 3 months pretty much is, first I was diagnosed with ADHD, which made suddenly a whole bunch of sense of everything in my life, why certain things have been difficult for so long. And then since really deepening into that and understanding it a lot more, creating a whole heck of a lot of routines that are vastly different to how I've been living my life for the last 34 years. And that is allowing me and together with Nick as well, so we were sort of both on the train in terms of having new routines and really looking after ourselves. We're just so much sharper, we're so much more alert, we're so much more stable, we can problem solve so much better, we can get so much more done every week. Like the fact that we pulled off what we did over the last 5 years while not looking after ourselves, I think is almost a miracle, because now we are so focused and so sharp, our stress levels are down, we're much calmer, we can breathe and look at everything and just analyze it and make whatever the best decision is without it overwhelming us. We're physically moving, we're looking after a mental state, and my routine at the moment is getting up at 4 a.m. every morning and doing some press-ups and reading some books, and having a cup of tea, and then going to yoga at 6 a.m. And then do a couple of hours of admin. So by the time 9 o'clock kicks around, I'm fully awake, I've done a whole bunch of stuff, I've looked after my mind, my body, I've gotten lots of things done, and then kick into the day. It's like, man, you just feel like Superman turning up.
So good.
So I can only wait to see what the next 12 months of that looks like for Nick and I, and also for our wider team. I guess one thing I didn't touch on, like what our business structure looks like, is as mentioned before, we had a lot of staff, or quite a few staff at least, when we initially moved into the workshop in town. And we have a bit of a different format now, is that we have built really strong relationships and connections and partnerships essentially with other specialists around Christchurch. So if we have come up with a new furniture design, like we'll draw it up, it will manufacture, we'll weld and sand and coat and drill and whatever to get the first prototype made, or maybe the first couple. But once we've got that refined, we have a partner around the corner who has a steel fabricating workshop with 5 staff, who is extremely good, way faster than us, way more specialized. That work goes over there primarily, and then the efficiencies kick in, and that means our capacity goes up without necessarily overhead. So we're still indirectly employing people because we're sending work just around the corner, just not under our own roof. And that same applies with a bunch of other aspects to our business. And we don't do anything. We don't send anything overseas. Whether it's we have an exceptional bookkeeper locally. Some of our timber work, we can laminate our own tops, but when we do big stacks of them, well, there's a company that can just punch out a few of them. Same with like the glass tops or the porcelain tops or whatever. We could cut the porcelain ourselves, or there's someone in town who specialises in that. So we have this team and this network of relationships that we've built around Christchurch. You want CNC work done to go over here, or whatever it might be. So our overheads are small, and our team and direct team are small, but actually our network and our partners are really vast, and you can come to us with practically anything and we'll know who. We either take it on or we'll send you in the right direction, and pull that all together with this this offering that we have, and this new lease of energy, I suppose. I think the next 12 months is looking pretty good.
Love that. Yeah, it's a dynamic model by the sound. It is one option to go the traditional team in-house employees, but there's also, as you've discovered and noted, real value in that joint venture partnership, supplier, forming those quality relationships with trust and with, convenience and efficiency in mind.
That's right. And you do that for a number of years. Like some of these partners we've worked with for 4 or 5 years now, they know us inside and out. We have great synergy. We don't have to ask for certain things. We know how we work. It's really just an extension of your team.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, it's cool. That was one of the big takeaways from seeing Stephen Bartlett in Auckland and live. It was just to involve more people in the process. And you don't need to employ them necessarily. No. They could come in a variety of different configurations, but just more people. Yeah,
that's right.
Which sounds really simple, but
just bring them on, and people are keen to be involved. And if there's something there for them, then they get rewarded for that. You get paid for your work, and everyone's happy there. And it doesn't need to be under the standard model of, hey, I want a 40-hour job here doing this thing. It's like, it's going as far as our in-house admin. Like if when we get an influx of inquiries, and we've done this. We even did this at the start, to be fair. It's like, instead of employing somebody as a full-time person who manages our inquiries and does an admin role, it's like, well, actually that person is really, really stoked doing a lot of their work remotely and being flexible, and musician in the weekends. And actually we employed someone who was stuck in Australia and in quarantine, coming back from Australia post-lockdown, and they were just contracting in and super stoked to be able to have that work, but also without having to be like, I've got this boss and I've got this requirement. It's like, no, we just have a contract that when certain emails come through, you have X amount of time to process them in this way, and outside of that, you do whatever you like. And that means we don't have a commitment of a big wage that we can't afford if the orders don't come through.
Yeah.
And you also get the flexibility of being like, well, where and when and how you do it. So I think I'm pretty keen to double down on that as we continue growing.
Having scalable options, and even if it's with reference to the co-working space here, being able to move your headcount from, if you want one desk, or if you want 10, you can have whatever you want, but you're not stuck in a fixed lease.
Exactly.
So with regard to the lifestyle changes and the health component of what you're talking about, do you mind if I ask about the alcohol factor? Is that something that's been altered, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I would drink too much. I think it was a stress reliever. And it would give me energy sometimes. If I had so much work to do, it's like, right, I have a glass of wine or two in the evenings, and it would just reduce my anxiety, and I would be able to keep working. And I was like, that's not sustainable at all. So at this stage, I've just cut it out entirely.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just don't see it benefiting me at all, actually, in any way. And the more I also look into it, it's like internationally, I think it's also a really big shift away from alcohol consumption, and referencing the younger generation earlier, as the drinking culture has significantly changed. I am really keen to make my body be as healthy for as long as possible. And I mean, even the glass of red wine once a week or whatever has been debunked a whole bunch of times. Like there's no physical benefit for it. You could make an argument that, it's nice at the end of a week, maybe with a couple of mates, and you have a couple of beers and you can have a laugh and like that relaxes you and it's a good social lubricant and da. I guess so, maybe. But I think for me at the moment, I'm more than happy not drinking at all and focusing on improving my health, my wealth, my life, my relationships and connections is they're, I suppose, more focused and deeper. You also realize suddenly the people that you don't spend time with, if you're not drinking at all, I guess that was just an overlap of drinking. It's not really too much else. So I'm super amped. And also just the difference you feel in the morning from having like 2 beers in the evening versus none at all. It's like I said, waking up at 4 o'clock every morning. It's like I'm quite happily get up at 4 at the moment. But man, if I have a couple of beers, like that is a painful morning and definitely not into it. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to experiment with, and it's something that I've been dabbling with over the last couple of years. Is on it, off it, moderating quantity. It's just interesting to see the difference. In this phase at the moment where I'll go a couple of weeks not have any, or a month not have any, and then have a couple and be like, Jesus, I do not feel optimal compared to what I have been feeling.
Yeah, it's hard the way because it's the other way. It's like I've got a hospo background, and I really appreciate good wine. I love a Negroni. Like, man, I don't know when I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to skip all these spots. Probably not. But I think I'll restrict it to just like good quality on rare occasions. It's like, man, an awesome local pet nat or something. It's like epic. Have a glass of that. If I'm out and about. But I think that's different to having a habit of like cracking a beer when you're home.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
I think that for me is permanently lost. But yeah, and I'm currently just in like a focus cleanse mode, I suppose. But yeah, there is an element of appreciating the beauty and the art and the essence of sometimes generations of knowledge and thought that's gone into curating something, and the same as with food. It's eat extremely healthy, but that doesn't mean if your opportunity comes up to go somewhere and eat something that technically isn't healthy, but it's like an epic culinary experience that's got a lot of depth to it. Awesome, but that's not getting a burger on the way home, though. No. It's
a spectrum, isn't it? Yeah. No, it's something to, I guess, experiment with, and I think that's the thing with life in general, whether it's time and energy management or alcohol or health or fitness or lifestyle or community or whatever. I think it's just a case of experimenting and finding your own way and not maybe being content with the status quo and just trying to constantly be curious.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
I think you're right. And I think it's completely, for everybody is different. And a lot of people will be more than happy feeling a little bit groggy on Sunday mornings because Saturday nights are a big part of their life, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you choose and like that's what you enjoy doing, then more power to you. Like this, I don't think there's a right or wrong there really, as long as you're not harming anyone else. And I think it is a bit of trial and error over time to see what works for you. But certainly I think, I don't know, I'd recommend for anyone, at least for a certain period of time, to go like pretty much full monk mode. Like it's like,
yeah, I agree.
Not extreme. Like, I mean, I was out with my parents and going for a walk along the Avon yesterday, and it was like an ice cream spot. Like we go to ice cream. It's like, that might seem like real, like that's the smallest thing in the world, but like day to day, I'm just like, I was explaining before, it's just like, I've just got my food on lockdown. I just done my research. It's like, cool, this is what I'm having on those days, boom. And it's just like maximum nutrients, efficiencies, it's affordable, it's all taken care of. And it's like, I don't have to think about it. I just click in like optimum fuel into my body.
Yeah.
But if you do that all the time, then you don't have to worry if you're doing something else from time to time, because overall your body's in a strong space and it can handle sort of a few things you throw at it, I'd say.
Yeah, no, for sure. Very good. Well, we've covered a fair bit of ground there. Yeah. It's been good. It's been really good.
Didn't know which direction this was going to go, but
neither did I.
Nice.
No, that's great. I appreciate your time. That's a great chat. I love the concept. I don't know if you've noticed about the anniversary edition. So bringing the guests back 12 months into the future, see how those predictions have either eventuated or not eventuated, making some new ones, reflecting. It's probably going to continue, I'd say, with the podcast journey, is doing the reunion episodes. So I'd love to have you back. I like what you're doing a lot. I'm super keen to see these outdoor tables. I can totally relate. I've purchased so many over my life, and it's just disgusting how many I've gone through. So I'm so glad to hear that you've solved that issue.
It's pretty standard practice. So I'll happily make one for you.
I love it. So good. Thanks, Guido.
Appreciate it.